Verachia.
Tell you what, yesterday we spoke about adding value, and I just want to make this point in terms of that's my point, where I said, why don't we share, especially people who are doing side hustle businesses, let's just share their businesses on our social media and WhatsApp platforms across the board. It's the least you can do. So I hope you're doing just that. Share what they're doing on your social media platforms so that others can buy into it. It's your way of recirculating wealth. Absolutely. There's a couple. In fact, we'll read some of the comments in a moment or so. Abdullah Verachia is with me, so he's going to add some value to you, particularly if you are in the tourism space, right? He is the he's the head of this. Well, I call him the strategist because that's his company, right? He's the strategist. He's also an author of a book called Disruption Amplified. Abdullah, welcome to the show as always. Thanks for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam Ashraf. It's good to be with you. Good to be with your listeners again. Looking forward to chatting to you today.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk tourism and how we can leverage off whatever we have in this tourism disrupted world.
Sure. So I thought it would be so important to talk about tourism because one of the sectors that have been hardest hit by COVID and the consequential impact of COVID has been tourism. But I thought maybe we must step back and really start to think about tourism, especially in a country where we've got rampant and high levels of unemployment. So if you think about tourism peak-COVID, tourism contributed almost 1.5 million jobs in this economy, and that's direct jobs, not even the indirect jobs. It was sizable in terms of contributing almost 8.6% of economic activity. And when you think of tourism, think beyond, as a listener, hotels, but all of the associated industries. And then COVID hit, right, in March 2020. And I often say that in times of crisis, we see the emergence of opportunity. Milton Friedman beautifully says that only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. And he says when that crisis is taken, the actions that are taken are dependent on the ideas that are lying around. And so I thought today, let's talk about some of the ideas in tourism, some of the opportunities in tourism. And you might say to me, Abdullah, we can't hop onto an aeroplane. I can't get onto an international flight. I'm unable to travel to some of the destinations that I used to travel. And I then say, well, that opens up new opportunities. It creates a space for us to better amplify local tourism. So it doesn't mean that the demand for tourism, it doesn't mean that people who want to travel has all of a sudden come to an end. It does mean that we've got to open up new opportunities for where people can travel and what that means. So yesterday, Ashraf, you spoke about Kentucky. And I often say that tourism is defined by the halo of specific activities. So when somebody Googles for Johannesburg or for Cape Town, they'll get all of the traditional tourist activities. But for me, the real value when I travel to some of the international countries that I go to is to live like a local, is to go to the local restaurants, is to identify with what are the special parts of this city or this region or this country that I'm visiting. And so that means that there's a great opportunity to open up real, authentic experiences for local travelers. So think about the very massive amounts of cities and towns that we have in South Africa and say, how do I open up those opportunities for people to come and visit? So let's think of the two of us. We live in Johannesburg. If we want to go to Paris this weekend, we don't really know the place. And I'm not talking of Paris in France, right? But Paris in the Eastern Free State. We don't know it, but it would be so fantastic to be able to engage with somebody who lives there, who can take us to the local sights and sounds, who can walk the streets with us and get us to understand the history of it. And I am particularly excited by these opportunities. So I've taken a decision that I've never been to Namibia, been to so many countries around the world, shukr alhamdulillah, but I haven't been to Namibia. And now I'm going to go to Namibia, inshallah, because this has given me a chance to do that. And so I think there's the opening up of new opportunities, Ashraf.
Well, there you are, and it's interesting. I mean, if I just give one of my own thoughts, and this is maybe not the off the beat story, but I went to Rwanda and then had lunch at the same hotel where that famous movie or infamous movie called Hotel Rwanda took place, and just being told the story around the story of the hotel. I mean, that's the type of added value or the halo effect you speak about, right?
Yeah, and I think what is important for all of us is to say. And in the last part of our series, in the last week, inshallah, we're going to talk a little bit around how do you build a personal disruptive mindset. And so let me put a nugget in. One of the things I say is you have to be inherently curious. You have to start to be curious about the world that we live in. And part of curiosity is pushing yourself not to do the same thing every year, not to go to Dubai every December or to go to Durban every April and expect a different result. It's being able to say to family and friends, let's go somewhere new. Let's find a new destination. And so even in Gauteng, it's finding a new space in Gauteng every weekend and going out and exploring it. And in the process, what you're doing is building local businesses, contributing to the local economy. And so it's really about amplifying this curiosity element that's inherent in all of us.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll leave you with this. I mean, a few years ago, and we have lots of family in Cape Town, but often we'll go for weddings or we'll stay at hotels. But about 3 years ago, we decided to deliberately not stay with family and not stay at a hotel, not at all. And we chose to stay in the Boerkaap or the Boerkaap area specifically for whatever it means in terms of the Islamic heritage. So we stayed at somebody's house on our own, right? And we therefore lived amongst the people of the Boerkaap, which people who know their history will understand that in many ways is the cradle of the Islamic community in South Africa. So that type of added value is just the type of things that you've just told me to think about. Be curious when you're making your choices. Abdullah, as always, thanks for your time. The strategist, Abdullah, and author of the book that you must read, Disruption Amplified. That's my point comes up in a moment.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving